Good morning to you all from deepest New Zealand, and I wish you all well, and I'm very much hoping that you will enjoy the next half an hour or so in which I'm going to sketch out briefly the nature of a coronation, what it means, what it implies, how it began, the pomp, the pageantry, the music, the fact that it only comes very rarely in a lifetime. In my long lifetime, I've experienced one, and that was the coronation of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. And as I mentioned in my preamble, which you may have read, I was actually there. I wasn't in Westminster Abbey. I was on the Mall, which is the great road leading from Buckingham Palace down to Trafalgar Square, and then right along Whitehall, past Horse Guards Parade, and so to Westminster Abbey. We'll be seeing that very route in just a moment. And it was a very dull, grey May morning, as I recall. My brother and I and friends slept on the sidewalk, on the concrete, all night. It was drizzling, and then in the morning, the whole thing erupted into a incredible excitement. Huge crowds, huge cheering as Her Majesty was taken in her great state coach, golden coach, down to Westminster Abbey for her coronation. Let's just take a look and see what it was like, shall we? Here we go.
Morning. Today, the writer of these lines is about to come forth from Buckingham Palace, a young mother and a reigning queen. Queen Elizabeth going forth to her crowning, wearing a diadem and her traditional parliamentary robe of velvet furred with ermine.
That is the coach. If you come along on Friday or when I give the full presentation, you'll see more of that. The coach itself, I've seen right up close. You can go, if you like, to Buckingham Palace, and you can enter the Royal Mews, and there you see the coaches all arrayed for you, and go right up close to that amazing coach, which was built during the reign of a king that in America you look back upon. I believe he was probably your last king, King George III, and it's been used in every coronation since, and it's going to be used in the forthcoming coronation of King Charles III. Now let's just take a look. What is a coronation? Well, a coronation is essentially a religious ceremony confirming the fact that the sovereign is the leader of the church, and it's very much run by the church. It takes place in Westminster Abbey, that ancient abbey built during the reign of Edward the Confessor before the conquest in 1066. And if you want to look at it in detail, you can look at this 14th century wonderful vellum manuscript called the Liber Regalis, the royal book, in which you can see how a coronation is organized and set out. Of course, we can't read that incredible script, but on the left-hand side, you can see King Richard II, who died in 1399. He's actually sitting on the very same throne or chair there, which the forthcoming coronation of Charles III will also involve. It was built in 1300 during the reign of King Edward I, and it was built in particular to house a massive stone, the stone of destiny, the stone of Scone, which Edward I, the so-called Hammer of the Scots, removed from the ancient Scottish capital of Edinburgh and brought down to Westminster Abbey. And it is upon that very stone, placed under that chair, that the sovereign is crowned. So let's just take a further look now, a close-up look. You can see that the king here is surrounded by members of the church. Currently, it's called, of course, the Church of England since the reign of Henry VIII. But in those days, it was simply the Catholic Church, and they're all attired in their archiepiscopal robes. And in front on the left, you can see the king, and on the right, you can see the queen. the king sitting in King Edward, St. Edward's, in the chair built by Edward I, built actually by Master Walter of Durham, of solid English oak. And the king is actually under his crowned head, holding the very same symbols, not actually the same physical symbols, because they were destroyed during the interregnum of Oliver Cromwell in the 1640s, but he's holding the orb and the scepter, being the symbols of sovereignty. This is the chair itself. You can see it's a massive edifice. On the left-hand side, you can actually see there the golden covering. It's all gilded with wonderful, as you can see, birds and patterns and flowers. And on the back, there's an actual image of the king. And in the under the seat itself, you can see that great stone, the stone of Scone, which was actually on the right-hand side. It's not there, is it? Actually taken by some Scottish students in 1950. They entered the abbey and nicked it back to Scotland, and there it has remained in Edinburgh, but it's brought down specially for the ceremony, which we'll be seeing so soon. And these are the crown jewels. Again, you can see them if you wish. You can go to the Tower of London, and there they are on display, heavily guarded. It's a long time since Captain Blood, in the reign of King Charles II in the 1660s, got in there and tried to steal them. They were made, in fact, all the ones you see there were made in the reign of King Charles II, because Oliver Cromwell melted all the old ones down when he had King Charles I executed in 1648. I think it was 1648. And there you can see St. Edward's crown, the one that will actually be used, weighing 2 kilograms, to placed on King Charles's head, the orb on the right-hand side, the spurs, the ampulla of the bird, the golden bird in the foreground on the left, that carries the holy oil, which is the absolute essence of the coronation when the king is anointed with the holy oil, as we shall see, made by the Patriarch of Jerusalem. Now, of course, coronations go back a very, very long way. They go back beyond William the Conqueror into the period of Anglo-Saxon rule. We can see, for example, that as we shall see in the forthcoming major presentation, how Anglo-Saxon kings were crowned in Kingston and in Winchester and in London. This is, in fact, William the Conqueror. And you can see at the bottom there, on the Bayeux tapestry, Willem Dux, King William of Normandy, Normanorum, Rex, the word for king, and there he is sitting on a crown, holding in his right hand the very orb, symbolizing his secular rule, and on the left-hand side, the scepter, exactly the same as will be seen in the next day or two. And this illustration here reveals how over the years there have been additions to the ceremony. In the reign of King Richard I, on his coronation on the 3rd of September 1189, they introduced the notion of golden spurs being offered to the king. And you can see this is a symbol, of course, of manliness, of valor. And it's interesting to note that in that reign, in the late 12th century, all Jews were banned from attendance. Isn't that terrible? And on the right-hand side, you can see the coronation itself of the king. And do notice the important point that in the right-hand side, the then Archbishop of Canterbury is holding the urn containing the oil to anoint the king. This is the absolutely vital essence of the coronation ceremony. And as we go through time, we see the way in which things have developed and changed, and yet remaining essentially the same. This is Queen Elizabeth, Elizabeth I. Now, when was Elizabeth crowned? I have a little check here to be absolutely certain that it was in 1558. And you can see her being borne aloft by her courtiers. And on the right-hand side, you can see, surviving to this day, the very dress in which Queen Elizabeth was crowned. And you can see also the wonderful ornamented canopy that is being held over Her Majesty, as shortly we shall see was held aloft during the anointing ceremony for her successor, Queen Elizabeth II. And then we go through time. This is Queen Victoria in her coronation in, when was it, 1836 or thereabouts. And if you look carefully behind her holding a sword, I think you can make out the stern visage of the Duke of Wellington, the victor of the Battle of Waterloo when he defeated Napoleon in 1815. And behind you can see the ladies in waiting, exactly as the ladies in waiting were seen holding the train of Elizabeth in 1953. Let's take a look now. This is the coronation of King George VI in 1936. The same coach, the same postilions, the same 8 fabulous Windsor grey horses, the same guards following behind, and the same massive and excited crowd.
But mainly it is the horse's day. No hint of the internal combustion engine. So strong is tradition that in this day and age, the modern form of transport has no part in the world's greatest secular ceremony. So in their medieval attire, the king and queen approached the abbey, the king wearing his capucin.
There you are. You'll see a lot more of that if you enroll. Now, this is the crucial moment. This is the moment when the king is actually crowned. This is, again, King George VI. I grew up in the reign of King George VI. He came to the throne as a matter of great surprise, largely because of an American lady, Wallis Simpson, divorced, you see. And it was his brother, Edward VIII, who fell in love with Wallis Simpson, who would have been crowned, only one of 2 kings since the Norman conquest who hasn't been crowned because he abdicated. He preferred life with his wife than life as the king. And it was Stanley Baldwin, the then prime minister, who told the king, abdicate or leave this woman out of it. Well, this is his younger brother, George VI, who was suddenly and unexpectedly catapulted into the sovereignty. He had a terrible stutter, and he was a very heavy smoker. And it was smoking ultimately, sadly, in 1953 that killed him. But here we see him in the great coronation chair. Now, notice on his right is an archbishop, and on his left is a bishop. This is traditional that goes back centuries. It's his Most Reverend, the Archbishop of York on his right, and the Bishop of Bath and Wells on his left.
And the Lord your God fill you with knowledge and wisdom, with majesty and with power from on high.
The sovereign receives the ring, a great sapphire slashed with a cross of ruby. The lord of the manor of Worksop presents the glove. His Majesty takes the scepter with the cross, the symbol of his earthly power, and the scepter with the dove, the symbol of divine guidance. How every eye is riveted on the St. Edward's crown as the Archbishop of Canterbury lifts it from the altar and the Dean of Westminster bears it to where the king sits in the coronation chair. The Archbishop of Canterbury takes it, raises it with solemnity, lowers it on the royal brow. The king is crowned. The peers acclaim their sovereign.
We'll stop it there for a moment. Who do you see up there? Well, I think I can point out that is we used to call her Old Queen Mary. She is the mother of the king, the mother of George VI, and she's the grandmother of the girl sitting or standing, I think, there on her left. That is Queen Elizabeth II, and poking her little head over the balcony there is Princess Margaret. And along here we have some royal relatives looking down. We'll see a lot more of that in due course. Now, this is going to be a quick clip of the actual anointing. You can see on the left-hand side there, awaiting the canopy borne by 3 dukes, and Her Majesty the Queen will soon appear in this clip for the actual anointing ceremony. It's surrounded by vital members of the court and of the organization of a coronation. Up in the top there, on the top right there, you can see the Archbishop and the men dressed in these amazing medieval costumes. I can see one here. Those are the heralds.
Thence goes Queen Elizabeth to sit in King Edward's chair for the most sacred rite of her anointing.
Well, as I say, this is only a little snippet. We'll see more later. Well, this coronation, with 7,000 people crammed into Westminster Abbey, lasted for 4 hours. I'm told, I read that the coronation of King Charles III shortly is going to be about 2 hours, with 2,500 guests crowded into Westminster Abbey. It's going to be trimmed back, given the difficult times in which we live, with inflation and with the cost of living and so on and so forth. However, it's still going to be a magnificent spectacle, and I read that the great golden coach will be used, at least for part of the ceremony, going back, I think, from Westminster Abbey to the palace. Now, here you can see, again, another clip, the huge crowd. This is just in front of Buckingham Palace. Look at the guards all the way down the side there. This I remember very well, since I was in the crowd there somewhere, watching all this magnificence. Notice the members of the household cavalry riding in advance of the carriage and behind it, and the postilions here with their 8 Windsor Greys, just as it was during the coronation of her father, George VI. Let's take a look at this too.
With full hearts, we salute this young, gracious lady upon whom the royal obligation rests, as she comes forth now upon the balcony of Buckingham Palace, before which, by tradition, the people come together to express their feelings.
There really is nothing quite like it, is there? It's all extraordinarily, well, both modern and ancient. Let's just take a look now at the balcony scene itself. This is always a highlight, isn't it, when you can actually rush up to the gates outside the palace and take a look and pay your respect. Now, well, who have we got here? I can pick out 1 or 2 familiar faces for you, if you like. These are the ladies in waiting, all 6 of them. And when I give my full lecture, I'll tell you who they are. They're all very, very aristocratic ladies indeed, with very long and fine titles, I can assure you. Then we have Her Majesty herself. And then as we come along, we can see King Charles himself here. let me think now, he would have been about 5 then, wouldn't he? Let me think. He was born in 1948 and this is 1953. And then next to Prince Charles there, the present king, we have his sister, Princess Anne. That, of course, is the Duke of Edinburgh. That is the mother of the Queen Mother, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. And if you see that head there, well, just to give you an example of who was up there, that is the Queen's uncle, the Duke of Gloucester. Then we come along, let's just have a look, see, go back at the end. And then we come along to, we better get back into it, hadn't we? We get back into other members of the entourage whom I can't recognize. So let's move on. Now, the oil. This is a very special concoction. I can give you the actual ingredients later. They're mixed here, and this is right now. This is just last week or so. The oils are mixed and blessed by his wonderful title, His Beatitude Theophilus III, the Patriarch of Jerusalem, and the Anglican Archbishop of Jerusalem. And that oil that they're mixing here is going to be used in the coronation to anoint the sovereign's brow. And it takes olives from, let me think now, the Gethsemane as the basis, and lots of other ingredients as well, which I shall be telling you all more about. And who actually participates as the leader other than the king? Well, his Grace, the Lord Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. You can see him there conversing with his sovereign just last week, I think, prior to the coronation. It takes a lot of organization, as you can probably imagine. You'll see a lot of the household cavalry, founded in 1660 with the restoration of Charles II after the 12-year dominance of the rule of Oliver Cromwell after the execution of King Charles II's father, Charles I. And on the left-hand side, you can see a lifeguard wearing a red tunic with white plumes. And on the right hand, you can see the Blues and Royals, distinguished by their blue tunics and red plumes. And so these wonderful soldiers with their really quite wonderful uniforms, as you can see, play a prominent role in guarding the sovereign. And then, of course, there is the sovereign himself, King Charles III. I'm told that he'll probably be wearing the same coronation dress as his grandfather, King George VI, at the top left there. You can see behind King George his royal coat of arms. On the bottom left, the harp, which represents Ireland and now Northern Ireland, and then the lions of England, and on the top right, the Lion of Scotland, reminding us that this is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. You take all the symbols of the various contributing countries into the royal coat of arms, and you can see on the right the king here opening Parliament, dressed in the uniform of an admiral of the fleet, with his garter ornament here, and I think that's the Order of the Thistle of Scotland and his various campaign medals. He was in the Royal Navy, of course, and this is the state crown, which he would normally wear at the opening of Parliament, and behind the lions of England in his throne in the House of Parliament. So that's what's going to happen. It's going to be a wonderful occasion. Let's just go back to the king again. It's going to be a fantastic occasion. It's going to be almost a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see a medieval custom of immense antiquity and pomp and panoply and wonderful music. The choir of Westminster Abbey is noted for its fine quality. The great coronation procession, the rituals that go with this, the anointing of the sovereign, and all in all, a thoroughly remarkable spectacle. And I'm very much hoping that those of you listening today will come along again in a day or two and see more of this in greater detail just prior to the actual crowning itself. Well, there you are. I've been given 30 minutes. I've taken up 26 or 27. And so I shall bid you all a good morning and a happy coronation. And as I said, with any luck, we'll meet again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles, for a lovely presentation. I saw a couple people posted some questions. We won't be doing questions with this free live stream. So if you have questions and want to learn more, I just put a link in the chat to the upcoming conversation this Saturday. So definitely please check it out. And Charles, in case you can't see, everyone is saying thank you for the wonderful presentation. And we appreciate you. And I hope everyone has a lovely rest of their days and evenings as well.
Thank you very much, Seku, and thank you very much to all of you who've tuned in and attended. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you about this.